the time has come for the lion to tell his own story. Yeah, the one them called Celestial represent for the mighty lion voice. And this a shook up your planet tectonic. As me sip up my roots and tectonic. And you can't make me jump nor get panic. Have the engine a run like mechanic. Room.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
Now, we have the benefit of hindsight, and we who have done the research understand that even after the coronation, His Majesty did reach out to Black Americans, trying to recruit them for his nation building. He was stopped by the State Department in America, who were not issuing the passports. He was offering African Americans competitive salaries, vacations, all kind of perks and benefits. He also gave the first land grant at Lake Tana. This is before Shashamane, for Black Americans. Of course, the rest of Africa was under colonial rule, so he couldn't necessarily reach out to other parts of Africa because of the restrictions. You know, it's even difficult today for inter-Africa trade. So even back then, there was zero inter-Africa trade that was happening. It was all being extracted to the colonies. And so, very difficult again. And His Majesty at this time is preoccupied with the centralization of Ethiopia up until the coronation, through the coronation, because we remember that Ethiopia up until this time is a confederation of warring kingdoms. And I speak about this in Haile Selassie's Ethiopia. This is why I wrote the book.
The year is 1892, and the land of Ethiopia has been experiencing 4 years of terrible famine and drought. They call it the Kikuken, or the evil days. At least 1/3 of the human population and 90% of the cattle have died. The hyenas have feasted on so many carcasses that they have become overweight and barely able to move. Just when the people could take no more of the evil days, a woman named Wasiro Yeshimabet is giving birth in a place called Erjersa Gora. This is her 9th attempt to bring forth new life. Her previous 8 attempts only resulted in death. Will this child live? Thankfully, a healthy baby boy is born. His first cries are drowned by thunder and lightning flashes across the night sky. The heavens open up and torrential rain starts to fall. Ethiopia's drought is over, and the baby boy is given the name TAFARI, meaning one to be feared or respected. LIDJ TAFARI's father, Ras McCunnan, is a very important man in 1892 Ethiopia. Although he is overjoyed at the birth of his newborn son, he cannot spend much time with him. Ras McCunnan is the governor of Harar and must get back to the famous walled city to deal with its affairs. Furthermore, he is the foreign minister of Ethiopia, and having traveled to different places in Europe, he is very aware of the material and military advances they have made and the looming threats they pose to his country. Ras McCunnan knows that the majority of Ethiopians have no idea what is coming, and that he has to work that much harder to secure the realm. LIDJ TAFARI would grow up to become the legendary emperor, Haile Selassie I. To understand his journey, we must first understand the Ethiopia that he was inheriting, and what it was like when he was born in 1892. Get your copy of Kwesi Bansu's book, Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1, The Rise of the Priestly Warrior Kings, and increase your knowledge about the history, politics, and culture of Ethiopia in 1892, and how it connects to the rest of African and world history at the time. Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1 is available for purchase at www.bookmanexpress.pub. Please visit for more information.
Today though, August 17th, we celebrate the earth strong of two mighty figures within the Pan-African world. Honorable mention also to the Crown Prince, Zariakob, who, according to His Imperial Majesty, was in the line of succession for the throne after the impairment of his firstborn son, Afsa Wilson. Who are the two Pan-Africans that I'm talking about? Every Pan-African watching this know already. One of them is, of course, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. The other being, of course, Emperor Menelik II. We both share their earth strong on this day, August 17th. So I'm going to do a two-part feature on these two because I don't want, I can't do justice to do both of them in one episode, and I want to do a kind of deep dive into both. So this strong, I'm going to start off with the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Next strong we'll do Emperor Menelik. And when we do the Emperor Menelik side, of course, we will go into the book Haile Selassie's Ethiopia that carries a good portion of the history of Emperor Menelik from his birth coming straight up. He's one of the main characters. Of course, he was a priestly warrior king. So he's one of the main characters in this groundbreaking work, Haile Selassie's Ethiopia. Make sure if you have not gotten your copy that you get your copy. And as we anticipated, the book is picking up steam. I'm getting calls, we're getting reach outs, and remember that you can get your signed copy off of the website. So if you go down to the website right here, you can get the signed copy of the work sent straight to you if you're in North America. If you are outside of North America, we have to work out something, but send us a message and we can see what can be worked out. But you can get it off of Amazon if you're outside of North America. Also in Jamaica, iNation Books, big up iNation, is carrying it. He's at the Kingston Night Market and many events across the island. So make sure, check iNation to get your copy. Alright, so today we're going to talk about Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And I'm going to issue a trigger warning because we're going to get a little bit critical of the Honorable Marcus. And I know for some of my viewership, particularly Bobo Shanti family, Marcus occupies a place in the Trinity. So we just want to put out a trigger warning in advance. No disrespect intended. We're just giving our perspective based on the history of Honorable Marcus, because I think it's an instructive lesson right now for the Rastafari and the Pan-African family as we grapple with some hard realities that confront the family. And the main thing that we're looking at is the gap between theory and practice. Pan-African theory and practice. Black supremacy, theory and practice. These are the things that we have to really analyze, and by looking at the history and some of the mistakes that Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey made, some of the points where ego got the better of Honorable Marcus Garvey, we can learn lessons and prayerfully avoid making some of those same mistakes. And I would argue that the relationship between Honorable Marcus Garvey and His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I was that of a father and a son. The son becoming more radical than the father and feeling like the father don't know what he'ma do and voicing it publicly, his displeasure with the father's reality. And there were consequences. The Honorable Marcus passed in a way that is not so hileful, and we'll get into how he died and when he died. and all of these things. But for those who are unaware what I'm talking about, we're talking about the Italian Ethiopian invasion and Honorable Marcus Garvey saying some very critical things about His Imperial Majesty. But before we get into the critique, the scathing criticism that Marcus had of His Majesty, and we'll look into it and see if it warrants any justification. Who was Marcus Garvey? Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica, and he is one of the foremost Pan-Africanists. I've heard it said that in America, black people did not start looking white people in the eyes until the Honorable Marcus Garvey came with the UNIA. Many of the leaders who were rise to become prominent in the civil rights movement had their origins as Garveyites.
And we can't forget about African leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, who loved Garvey so much he put the black star on the Ghana flag. You also had Nnamdi Azikiwe, first Prime Minister of Nigeria. What about Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, and so many more major influence for African liberation movement. So Marcus Garvey plays as the foremost Pan-Africanist, aside from His Imperial Majesty, who I place at number 1 on the Pan-African charts. Kadamawi, the first, you know what I mean? But aside from Kadamawi, there's none other than Marcus. His place is sealed in the history.
So, who am I talking about? If you look at Malcolm X, his father was a Garveyite. When we look at the Honorable Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, all of these ones were Garveyites coming out of the Marcus Garvey movement. I believe Martin Luther King father had some origins in the Garveyite movement as well. The item can correct I in the comments if that's not correct, but I believe I did read that somewhere. And the platform that Marcus came to was that he was looking at the Almighty through the spectacles of Ethiopia. He was a Catholic, you know what I mean? But he interpreted everything from a black point of view. And the main thing was, again, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. Repatriation, some of the basic tenets that still remain as the core of the Rastafari movement. And Honorable Leonard Howell, you know, Archibald Dunkley, Charles Hibbert, all of these ones were coming out of that Marcus Garvey reality. He was a giant when it comes on to Pan-African movement. The Black Star Liner, you know, when we hear our Bubble Shanties talk about 7 miles of high water ship, you know what I mean? Big up all the Bubble Shanty family. Marcus Garvey is the one who inspired it and got the furthest of any Pan-African leader in realizing that goal. Now, the first black FBI agent in the history of the United States of America got his job so that he could infiltrate the UNIA, and we realized that Marcus Garvey was heavily infiltrated, and every black leader has had to face this type of infiltration. And this is something that we have to recognize, you know. His Majesty, of course, faced it. So this is, again, where we talk about the gap. Because the chessboard that His Majesty is playing on is much greater as the head of the most ancient monarchy. We have to realize that while every black leader has been attacked, His Majesty was actually attacked and invaded the largest army in the history of the modern era to ever invade Africa. was the Italian Invasion Force, which by some estimates numbered in excess of 300,000 soldiers underground coming into Eritrea when you include the Eritrean forces that fought against their Ethiopian brothers who were called the Askari. So His Majesty had to deal with this on a scale never before seen. Marcus Garvey was attacked by J. Edgar Hoover, the cross-dressing head of the FBI, who, some people say had some black genetics and probably was a self-hating person. But that's another story. I won't get into J. Edgar Hoover history. But Marcus Garvey ended up being arrested. Before that, he lost the favor of a lot of his African American supporters by not really understanding culture in America when he decided to meet with the head of the Ku Klux Klan. Of course, Garvey's rationale was that they wanted black people to go back to Africa. He wanted to go back to Africa. So he never really business what him would deal with. He was trying to find some middle ground. That didn't go well with the African American base that he had built. So there were a lot of divisions in UNIA even before the infiltration and the division. But he was arrested on mail fraud, trumped up charges, ended up being deported back to Jamaica, a land that did not love him. So he could not build the same strength in Jamaica. He started the PPP party and tried to get into politics. It was not successful. And he ended up moving to London in 1935. This is the same year that the Italian invasion took place. So he was in London watching the events unfold. Again, the largest invasion. And by that time, we have to understand that where his mental state was. It was not the early 20s when the UNIA was at its strength. It was a Marcus who had been beaten by life, at every turn, but who still held firm to the vision that he had. Some people would argue that trying to go to Liberia instead of Ethiopia was the error, because Liberia, of course, was an American protectorate by all means, although some people say it's independent, but when you dig into the history of Liberia, you see it was under the American sphere of influence. So I don't consider Liberia as a truly independent African state. It was really being run by the Firestone Company and their rubber plantations, and they sabotaged Marcus Garvey's efforts. So by the time he goes to London, Marcus is in a head state, and he already has an impression that he's formed of the emperor. He's not a fan because he feels the emperor should have been more radical in reaching out to the black world. He feels like the emperor is trying to dissociate himself from the black world. Now, we have the benefit of hindsight, and we who have done the research understand that even after the coronation, His Majesty did reach out to black Americans, trying to recruit them for his nation building. He was stopped by the State Department in America, who were not issuing the passports. He was offering African Americans competitive salaries, vacations, all kind of perks and benefits. He also gave the first land grant at Lake Tana. This is before Shashamane, for black Americans. Of course, the rest of Africa was under colonial rule, so he couldn't necessarily reach out to other parts of Africa because of the restrictions. It's even difficult today for inter-Africa trade. So even back then, there was zero inter-Africa trade that was happening. It was all being extracted to the colonies. And so, very difficult again. And His Majesty at this time is preoccupied with the centralization of Ethiopia up until the coronation, through the coronation, because we remember that Ethiopia up until this time is a confederation of warring kingdoms. And I speak about this in Haile Selassie's Ethiopia. This is why I wrote the book, because I think a lot of people from the outside don't realize what had to be done to even unite Ethiopia. It was thought, and you can read in the papers of the day, that even at the coronation of His Majesty that a civil war could have broken out, because you had the great Rasses and their private armies coming to Addis Ababa, and many of them did not like each other. Many of them had shed blood with them one another, and they were coming to show their fealty to the King of Kings. But it was a tense situation, because these people don't usually meet, much less with the might of their armies. But His Majesty, because of the work he had done prior, was able to be crowned without any incident. This in itself could be considered a miracle. Now, ones like Marcus Garvey wouldn't be aware of these dynamics. They would just be critical that Ethiopia had not progressed faster. Again, the gap between theory and practice.
Well, great is the Almighty, and greatly to be praised in the city of Haile Selassie I, the mountain of His holiness.
Yeah, from Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, the whole entire continent.
Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, from Accra to Addis Ababa.
Yes, it's a beautiful continent, better control, Mama Africa.
Very beautiful.
From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, I smile for Mama Africa.
I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I see Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. We gonna use solar energy, use sanitation to build the ecology. We utilizing green technology. We hailing Haile Selassie first without apology. And then we build the youths them economy. We dismantle Babylon monopoly. We teach the youths them how to live properly. Tell them make sure them got the title for them property.
Yes, this beautiful continent, better control, Mama Africa. From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, I smile for Mama Africa.
I love you, Mama, your heart never harden. I wanna turn all your slums into garden. I wanna stop all of your youths from starving. I wanna stop all of your tribes from warring. So much to say, so many feelings. We both been hurt, we both need healing. Since the League of Nations you've been appealing. You stand up against them backdoor dealing. I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I see Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. Then I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long in America. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw.
So be still, all enemies of Jah. Know that He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the Lion Conqueror. And it was said of Ethiopia, the highest himself shall establish her. His Majesty was born there.
And I know that I love you so. There's no place that I'd rather go. Tired of walking through slush and snow. Repatriation, that's a must I know.